So we know that Kasplex has parallel solutions for layer 2 development, and Kasplex is one of them. Today they have a very interesting topic called climate change. Is it the polar bears or us? They're going to reintroduce Kasplex approach for layer 2. Now let's welcome the representative for Kasplex.
Test, test. Does this thing works? Oh, okay, great. Okay, so morning everyone. We are basically finished with the core part and the so-called official part, and while the Kasplex community will say it's unofficial part of the discussion. So originally this speech should be given by Kaspator, which is a representative of Kasplex. Unfortunately, he cannot come because he's kind of stuck in Romania and I have to do this presentation. My name is Johnny, I'm from the Kasplex Foundation. Anyways, I'm just doing this on behalf of them, and I think this is going to be a fun one for everyone. So basically, Kasplex is a layer 2 design that is to be implemented on Kaspa network, right? And my topic chosen today is about climate change. It asks a question if something is about polar bears. And I will jump directly to explain what this means, all right? So I have this inspiration from my hotel room bathroom. I saw this saying says, you know, long showers make me feel nice, but leaves bears on thin ice, something like that. My immediate question of this thing is, I don't necessarily understand, you know, why I should care more about the bears instead of my own feelings in a shower room, right? And I can go very deep in the meta-ethics questions to talk about this. I know some of my friends and guest speakers here, like Larry, has also expertise in this knowledge as well. But the point here is that when we try to design an L2 plan or implementation, I think we really back the question, who do we want to serve? And is it always the case that we want to build an open network for all the developers? We think, of course, developers are important, but there are different scenarios and different categories existing out there, and different priorities to be placed for these different situations. So basically, the roots of Kasplex are twofold. The first is that we think we are facing some people like us. This is the three, like the bottle jugglers and the, the really, not staff and not intelligent people like me. But they're the real-world asset issuers. They're the real-world asset buyers. And they can be the investors, and they pay the fees for network use as very common and ordinary people. So it means that we don't necessarily understand anything about the code or about technical design, but we're still very important as we pay the fees of the network, right? And for these people, we think the important feature for a layer 2 design is that it must be secure enough. And of course, it must be easy to use, easy for people to launch assets and to trade assets. It must have transparent cost, so people can do their math game. What is my yield rate? If I cannot get a clear number of my costs of purchase, then I cannot calculate my rate of return, right? And of course, which I call as a polar bears, are the developers as users, right? Because I think this is, the code is law legacy we have in this world. Basically, we are saying that developers are so important, they develop products, and therefore they bring in the products. However, we think this is important, but at the same time, we say the priority is then to build an open dev environment to make sure people can co-build and co-work with each other, but that doesn't necessarily apply to other users. So with that said, I want to briefly firstly go on talk about what has Kasplex done in the past. So basically, starting from last July, that Kasplex successfully launched the KRC protocol. I want to highlight that a lot of the Kaspa communities is thriving with this backbone. The so-called Kaspa name service, the so-called KRC71 NFT service, and also the marketplace you have on KSPR bots and Kaspa.com are essentially operated with this backbone. Even though Kasplex doesn't shine itself as much, but in fact, this is factually true that they are providing this infrastructure for almost all of the currently existing services and DApps or products you have on the network. And what we also have done in the past week is that we released the testnet for the ZKVM, which is at least one of the earliest smart contract platforms that is to be built on Kaspa. At the same time, I want to emphasize that Kasplex remains as a non-profit protocol initiative, which means they're not making any money out of it. To be honest, we understand there are certain wallet service providers and other so-called community projects that made a lot of money with our protocols. And again, we're very happy to see it, as we think the community can create more value based on what we built. We're very proud of it. So I want also to briefly comment on what KRC20 actually does, or how should we give an assessment of that. So I think I will argue KRC20 is still successful, but not as successful as we expected. My reasoning and evidence is essentially that this increases income and revenue for miners. And miners who are mostly not that loud or expressive on Twitter posts, they are indeed the basic safe net of the security of this network, right? And essentially, we see this KRC20 launch as an attempt to enhance the security budget for the miner network. However, we also recognize that there are some not so pleasant parts. For instance, we almost have all the 2,000 tokens are meme tokens with no really famous IPs attached, and we don't really have the cost or KRC20 versus USDT trading pairs. So once you make money with KRC20 inscription, you have to sell it for cost, and you have to sell cost for US dollars to make the money. And we also see that the wallet and marketplace infrastructure service is limited. So very similar to an NFT marketplace or BRC20 marketplace. You can only make a solo order on the Kaspa marketplace so far, which makes the market and buyers fail to realize if some people want to buy this thing. So you can only see how many people want to sell things at a certain price, and we think this is bad, and it doesn't really, it essentially prevents price pumping from happening. I mean, for KRC20 tokens, not for Kaspa. Although this is like the inherent flaws of PSPDs or PSKDs, this is technological flaws. It's not really an issue of our design, but we still see that's the reason why it's not perfect. So we see that we have made a significant attempt, but we see there's still stuff to be improved on. And another outstanding comment I want to make is about how Kasplex engages with the upcoming KIP 15 proposal, which is Kaspa improvement proposal, to be launched by the main network. So we think that we received certain not so reasonable criticism that somehow we are irrelevant to KIP 15. But the truth is that KIP 15 is just a layer 1 infrastructure that any L2s that built on Kaspa can be using. Right? So of course, KIP will be implemented on Kasplex KRC20, and of course also on IGRA, which would demonstrate the project after me. But we won't argue that KIP 15 is just an exclusive thing belonging to any specific layer 2. So basically, we are saying that it's something everyone should cater to, and someone should take advantage of the mainnet features, rather than saying this is something exclusive belonging to any specific layer 2s. Any opinions in that direction, we believe is basically a misconception. At the meantime, the KRC20 system, before I jump into the ZK-EVM, already has combat archive codes, which is in alignment with the spirit of KIP 15, and therefore it's just more of an improvement rather than a change to the very basic fundamental design of our things. So here's my conclusion remarks for this section, right? So basically, we argue that KRC20 is not for the polar bear developers at the very first place, right? Again, we argue the feature of providing secure access, the feature of providing convenience of launch and trading with transparent costs is appropriate and sufficient for any people who wants to launch assets in this, the BlackRock or those kind of asset owners who are not developers. So we argue that security mechanisms is guaranteed by miners. We say these are inserted protocols of Golang language written, but they're invulnerable to contract core attacks. And we also say it's efficient in preventive of state bloat and so on. What's going on right now is that for the decentralization, we still require the launch or implementation of light indexer by Kasplex so that anyone can run an indexer. But this, again, is not an it's not a technical constraint for decentralization. It's more like a hardware stuff. Of course, the bad part of this design is that it's not really programmable. It's not really extendable. So devs cannot build freely on it. But again, this is not for devs anyway, so we are perfectly happy with it. And then what we will be offering as a parallel track plan is this ZK EVM design, right? So we think this is the place we have for the polar bears, right? Just to remind people that what do developers need layer 2s for? So Kaspa is a perfect layer for you to achieve perfect consensus and decentralized sequencing, etc. But layer 2s should be exclusively used for computation. And we believe that building a ZK-based rollup layer 2 is pretty consistent with the mainnet design anyways. And a quite interesting question would be, how do you know this is going to be, consistent with mainnet design? Our response to this is that although we don't read the mind of the mainnet designers, but we believe that Kaspa, to deliver its mission, needs to be as inclusive as possible. So if you're using the very mainstream and the most popular plan on the market, then it has to be inclusive of us as well. So what I want to highlight here is that while we argue we have open dev environment and non-restriction for developers, Kasplex is also making its own new wallet and services that supports both Kaspa tokens as well as Ethereum or ERC20 standard tokens. This means that if you want, you can just send your transactions to layer 1 directly. And just a bit discussion of relayer, and again, I think the IGRA team will do a better explanation of this, but they already brought the term to the community, so we just decided to stay close with the term as well. So we believe a relayer is also important, especially when the developers don't want to build their own wallet service, new wallet services, so they can just test and build the apps there. We offer the same thing as well, but we do want to notify that a relayer still potentially introduce the risk of centralization theoretically. Of course, I'm not saying any layer 2 here is going to do anything bad, but essentially this is a theoretical risk. And in the end, we still stand, this is in alignment with the foundation stance. We don't support issuance of new tokens. We want to use rep costs or some mutation of costs as a fees. So very quickly, that there are also other challenges we have been spotted with the construction of ZK rollups, and we think we welcome more builders to join us or join the Kasplex community in general to tackle these challenges. We think that building a ZK EVM is extremely difficult in terms of resolving the data storage plans, as we basically listed out there that the hash algorithm and adopted by ZK EVM and EVM are very different, although it seems like the difference between names is just like 2 alphabetical letters, right? So we argue that there are many challenges, and it's very difficult to shift or move from EVM to ZK EVM after a launch. Although, again, I put all the text here because I'm not going to say all those. It's mostly just for people to read it. Still, we don't think there's much difference for the non-polar bear users who are not developers. And again, we are confident in that what Kasplex is offering is good and sufficient for use of most audiences of the user groups. So just quickly to wrap up, again, I'm not part of the Kasplex team, so don't find me if you have any questions. There are some Kasplex guys there. So basically, they're a non-profit initiative, so if you want, you can donate to their address. They cannot make money. That's a tragedy directed by the foundation because we don't allow them to do so. And also, if you want to join the ZK EVM testnet, you can go scan the QR code or contact these people on Twitter. These are their Twitter accounts listed out here, or scan the QR code to follow their project Twitter accounts, and I believe people will get back to you very soon. In general, that we are very happy that we would be offering the smart contracts systems to the Kasplex community, and again, we are very comfortable and confident with what we're offering to the specific group of customers and users we're targeting, and we quite believe that's next power for Kaspa to grow and to have more adoption in general sense. Thank you very much.